As I approached the entrance of McMurry Hall on the first day of class, I noticed a guy and a girl I'd seen around campus, but didn't know. He was gripping her hands, shaking her while she cried. My father was old-fashioned. To him, women were the weaker sex, and it was a man's duty to protect them. That's how I was raised. I believed it too, until I realized that Beverly Abbeg could throw a ball farther than me. Nancy Wild could outrun me, and Nancy Neubert could outhit me. Sure, I could kick the ball farther, but her batting average was probably around .375, while mine hovered closer to .290. By middle school, the idea that women were weaker was long gone, but the instinct to protect them lingered. I walked up to the pair and said, "Get your hands off her." "Back off, asshole. This is none of your business," he shot back. "It is now. Let go of her," I demanded. "Or what?" he challenged. "I'm going to hit you." "Yeah? We'll see about that." He released her, but before he could turn to face me, the girl hit him herself, shouting, "Fuck you!" before hurrying into the building. Weak, I thought, following her inside. She didn't look back at me, and it wasn't until later, during the roll call for Introduction to Production Management at 1 p.m., that I learned her name was Barbara Beeler. I found out the guy was David Short in my first creative writing class. The next day, Short approached me in the cafeteria. "Just so you know, we have unfinished business, and I won't forget it," he warned. I stood up. "Let's settle it now." "Here. Are you crazy?" he asked, incredulous. "Not crazy, just practical. We can be out the front door in 2 minutes and in the parking lot in 3. Let's go." "You're crazy," he muttered before walking away. I shrugged and sat back down. A couple of minutes later, Miss Beeler sat at my table. "What did Dave want?" she asked. "He thinks we have unfinished business from yesterday. I guess he didn't like me stepping in." "Why did you get involved? You don't even know me. I hope it wasn't because you were trying to impress me. I already have a boyfriend." "Good for you. As for why I got involved, I don't like seeing guys bully girls. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get to class." I stood up and walked away. Maybe it was rude, but her snide attitude when she assumed I was competing for her attention rubbed me the wrong way. It's a shame. She was attractive, and under different circumstances, I might have been interested. After school ended, Short was waiting for me. "All right, smartass," he began. "So you were really going to hit me." I cut him off by hitting him before he could finish. He was caught off guard, probably expecting some sort of verbal sparring before we got down to business. To me, if you're going to fight, just fight. He looked up at me, stunned. "You hit me," he said. "No, I didn't. You were standing here waiting for me, expecting to beat me up. Just because I didn't wait for you to take the first swing doesn't make what I did a cheap shot. Are you going to get up so we can finish this?" He got to his feet, and I stood there, ready for him to strike, but he hesitated. I started to see what was really going on. He was a bully, and he wasn't used to being challenged. He was bigger than me, 3 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier, and I think he expected me to back down, maybe even run away crying. Other guys my size might have done that, but I wasn't like the others. At 5'7", I was 4 inches shorter than most of the other kids my age. My father, who was only 5'6", knew what it was like to be picked on by bigger kids, so he taught me how to stay calm under pressure. Shorty wasn't the first to find out I didn't take crap from anyone, no matter their size, and he probably wouldn't be the last. Some might knock me down, but I'd always fight back. Short didn't like what he saw, so he muttered, "Fuck you," and walked away. As I looked around, I noticed a crowd had gathered. I heard one girl say, "It's about time someone put that asshole in his place," and another chimed in with, "Amen." It seemed Short wasn't very popular. I bent down to pick up my books from where I'd dropped them. When I stood up, a pretty dark-haired girl smiled and said, "I'll let you carry my books if you walk me home." "Oh, no, you won't," came another voice. "He's with me." I turned and saw Barbara Beeler standing there. The smartass in me couldn't resist. "Why, Miss Beeler, I didn't think you cared." "That's because you're a man, and you don't understand anything," she replied, taking my hand. "Come on, honey." She was right about one thing. I didn't understand what was going on. She'd just told me she had a boyfriend. "Where are we going?" I asked. "You're walking me home from school," she said. "Just curious. What happened to the guy you had 3 hours ago?" "I've decided to switch to another class." "Please enlighten me. You already said I don't understand anything, so I need some clarity. Otherwise, I'll stay clueless, and I can't imagine you'd want a guy who doesn't get it." "Are you my boyfriend now?" she teased. "I'm just following your lead." Your "he's with me" sounded pretty definitive. "As for my ex-boyfriend, you saw our breakup firsthand. My knee to his groin and my bag of books to his head made it pretty clear it was over." "But you told me you had a boyfriend this morning in the cafeteria, and that was after you made a scene." "I said that because I didn't want you thinking you could make a move just because you stepped in to help. After everything with Dave and my past experiences with guys, I was fed up with the whole lot of you. But as the day went on, I changed my mind. I decided the white knight who came to my rescue deserved a closer look. When Glenda tried to stake her claim, I wasn't about to let her win, so I claimed my rights. Now, we need to find a place where we can sit down over coffee and get to know each other better. There's just one problem. I have to go to work. I have time to drive you home if you don't live too far, and I get off at 7, so we could meet up then. I actually live in the dorms, so it's just a short walk for me. How about we meet at Harry's Shake Shack at 7:15? "Sounds like a plan." She headed to her dorm, and I made my way to the student parking lot to grab my truck and head to work. "You're late," Dad said as I walked into the office. "It's your fault." "What's my fault?" "You're the one who drilled 'take care of the weak' into my head," I said, explaining how my day had gone, especially with Short. "You did well, Bobby. I think I can let you off the hook this time," he replied with a smile. The workday flew by, and when I arrived at Harry's, Barbara was already there, sitting in a corner booth with 2 guys. I walked past them and took a seat at a table. Before I even settled in, Marge was there, ready to take my order. "What'll it be, Bobby?" "You know what I want, Marge." "I'm sorry, Bobby, but I'm not ready to leave Sam just yet." "Then I guess I'll settle for a well-done burger, fries, and a strawberry milkshake, but I'll keep waiting for the day you finally dump Sam." "You'll be waiting a long time, Bobby, but I'll keep you in mind," she said, walking away. Barbara got up from the booth, came over, and joined me. She sat down and asked, "Why didn't you join us?" "Didn't want to intrude." "I'm here to meet you. You could have just joined us." "I don't know you, Miss Beeler, or the crowd you hang out with. You've seen how I react when people get in my face. What if I'd tried to join you, and one of those guys told me to scram? Harry might have banned me from the place, and I can't risk that. I'm addicted to his strawberry milkshakes." "I can't help it if people who know me want to join. I told them I was expecting someone, and they said they'd keep me company until you got here. I'm sorry. I didn't consider how it might look from your perspective." "No problem. Since we're here to get to know each other, tell me about yourself." "Well, you know my name. I'm a 20-year-old junior majoring in interior design. I'm from Ypsilanti, Michigan, a place you've probably never heard of. My favorite color is blue. I like almost all music except rap. My mom makes an incredible 5-cheese macaroni that's my favorite food. I enjoy soccer, baseball, and I really love basketball. I think hockey is dumb, and soccer's boring. I love dancing, and I never kiss on the first date. What about you?" "Nothing too exciting. I'm a 20-year-old junior majoring in business administration. Born and raised here. I work in the family business. I don't have a favorite color, but I don't dislike any particular one either. My music taste ranges from classical to rock and roll. I can't stand rap, most acid rock, or heavy metal, but I'm crazy about bluegrass. Always dreamed of playing the banjo. I've heard of Ypsilanti. I almost went to school there. I had a baseball scholarship to Eastern Michigan, but my dad convinced me to stay here and work in the family business. He wants me ready to take over if anything happens to him. As for food, my favorite is whatever I'm eating at the moment. My favorite sport is baseball, with soccer a close second. The other sports don't do much for me, and I'm always up for kissing a girl if she's willing." "I have to ask, do you have a girlfriend?" she inquired. "Not anymore. There was someone, but she wanted to keep me around while she saw other guys. She said constant sex was too high school, That didn't work for me, so we broke up. You don't seem too happy about it. No, we were together for 5 years and both our moms were already planning the wedding. If she wanted to come back, would you take her back? No, too many bridges have been burned for that to happen. So, where are we going on our first date? Are you free on Friday? Do I really have to wait that long? It's just 3 days. I'm swamped with work, studying, and papers until then. What are we going to do? You mentioned you like to dance, so how about we go dancing? I'd love that. Where? The teen club is where I usually go. Usually? I thought the teen club was the only place for people under 21. Not exactly. You can go to the VFW if you're with a member. My parents go there every Saturday night, and sometimes I tag along. So, if I play my cards right, we could dance both Friday and Saturday? It's possible. We chatted for about 10 more minutes before I walked her back to her dorm. When I picked her up on Friday, I almost said, "Wow," out loud. I'd always thought she was pretty, but I'd only seen her with her hair in a ponytail, minimal makeup, and dressed in jeans and a sweater. Now, she had her hair down to the middle of her back, wore makeup, a dress, and heels. I didn't say wow, but she saw the expression on my face, smiled, and said, "Thank you. That's exactly the reaction I was hoping for." When we arrived at the teen club, several people I knew were already there. I introduced them to Babs. She preferred that over Barb or Barbara. And we pushed a couple of tables together to sit as a group. The waitress took our order, a Coke for me and a Dr. Pepper for Babs. Then we hit the dance floor. Babs not only loved dancing, but she was also incredible at it. She didn't let me off the floor until the band took a break. During the break, more people joined our group, and I introduced them to Babs before we sat down to chat. When the band resumed playing, Babs pulled me back onto the dance floor. As we waltzed, Babs said, "I noticed your expression when you introduced me to Pauline and Charlie. You didn't seem too thrilled." Pauline is the girl I was with for those 5 years. She seemed happy to see you. How about we talk about something else, like your favorite color, blue, right? Okay, I get it. Off limits. How about the Broncos? We danced a few more songs before returning to the group. Fortunately, Pauline and her date were seated at the far end of the tables, too far for any personal interaction, but still closer than I'd have liked. I should have known she'd be at the club on a Friday night. A girl Babs knew, Cindy, joined us and took the seat next to her. As Babs and Cindy started chatting, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Turning around, I saw Pauline, who smiled and asked me to dance. Babs overheard and said, "Go ahead, honey, I don't mind." With that, I felt like I couldn't say no. I could have, but I knew how Pauline would react, and I didn't want to ruin the evening. So I stood up, took her hand, and we walked onto the dance floor. As we waltzed, she said, "I wanted to scratch her eyes out when she called you honey." "I've missed you, baby. Why haven't you called or come to see me?" "You know why, Pauline." "What's with this, Pauline? You've always called me Polly." "That was back when you were mine. Once you started dating other people, that changed. And that's why I didn't call. You're not mine anymore." "But I explained it to you, baby. I was still yours. I just wanted to go out with other guys sometimes." "And I told you that was unacceptable to me. It would destroy us as a couple, but you did it anyway. It hurt. A lot. But I moved on." "Damn it, Bobby. I was still yours." "No, you weren't. You belonged to anyone who asked you out." I felt a tap on my shoulder, and a voice asked, "Mind if I cut in?" I turned to see her date. Stepping back from Pauline, I said, "Go ahead," and walked back to the table. "I was wondering if I'd have to cut in myself," Babs said. "No need. We're here to dance, right?" She flashed me a wide smile, stood up, and we headed back to the dance floor. For the rest of the evening, every time I glanced in Pauline's direction, she was looking at me. Babs hadn't kept her word. She kissed me on our first date, and again on the second, third, and fourth. After 4 more dates, I brought her home to have dinner with my parents. Later, as I drove her back to her dorm, Babs said, "Your mom doesn't like me." "You can't be sure of that." "Yes, I can. I can tell. She doesn't think I'm right for you." "It's in our nature." "What is?" the urge to make a move on you. If that's true, why haven't you tried? I wasn't sure if the timing was right. How about now? Can you take me somewhere? I smiled and said, if you insist, then turned left on Wilcox. A few minutes later, we arrived at a quiet spot where we could be alone. We shared an intimate moment. Afterward, Babs looked at me and said, I could get used to this. How soon can you go again? Maybe in 10 minutes. What if I help? I'm not sure. Then we'll just relax for a bit. She leaned into me, and before long, I was ready again. We spent more time together before I had to take her back to the dorm. On the way back, we made plans for another date the next night to go dancing at the VFW. As I walked her to the door, she gave me a kiss that left me on cloud 9. Saturday was only a half day at work, and when I got home, I found Pauline waiting for me by the car. We need to talk, Bobby. About what? About us. We're done, Pauline. When you started dating other guys, that was it for us, eh? I tried to explain. We hit it off in 8th grade, and you were only my second boyfriend. I just wanted to see what else was out there. You were still my boyfriend, and occupied most of my time. You were my first girlfriend, Pauline, and from the moment I met you, I knew I didn't need anyone else. When you told me you wanted to explore other options, it was like a punch to the gut. I never said that. Yes, you did. When you mentioned wanting to date other guys, it was the same as saying you weren't satisfied with me. It was clear that if you found someone else you liked better, you'd leave. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is, Pauline. The only reason to look around is to see if there's something better. Well, good luck with that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a date to get ready for. I got in my car and drove off, leaving her standing there, watching me leave. I was still a bit upset from the conversation, but my mood lifted when I picked up Babs. She looked fantastic in her skirt, blouse, and heels. Thank you, she said. For what? Judging by the look on your face, are heels okay for tonight, or should I switch to flats? Heels are perfect for tonight. Why the detailed answer? Tonight will be a mix of dancing, waltzes, a foxtrot or two, and some rock and roll. For the country western dance on the 3rd Saturday of the month, boots or shoes with leather soles are best. 3rd Saturday? That's next week, right? Will there be a dance? Absolutely. Do you want to set up another date for next Saturday? Definitely. It's a date then. We enjoyed ourselves at dinner with my parents. At one point, my dad remarked, "She seems a bit assertive. Are you sure you can handle that?" "I'll do my best." After the dance, as we drove back, Babs said, "I wouldn't mind a repeat of last night if you're up for it." "Of course, I don't mind. You stayed close all night, and I enjoyed every minute of it." "Anything that works for me," she replied with a smile. She turned to me with a smile. "I really enjoyed talking to your mom. She seemed quite interested in my interior design major. I think she feels like she missed out. She had to leave college when she got pregnant with me and never had the chance to return. As for your dad, I'm not sure he likes me very much. I get the feeling he wants me out of your life, though he might be attracted to me as well. That's probably just your impression. He seems to think I'm taking on more than I can handle by being with you. I'm sure he's skeptical about whether I can manage it." I felt confident about how the evening went. When I dropped Babs off at her dorm, I told her I'd see her at school on Monday, received another passionate kiss, and went home feeling exhilarated. Babs and I met for lunch a few times during the week. On Wednesday, we grabbed hamburgers and fries before heading to room 19 at the Red Roof Inn for dessert. Friday night included dinner, a movie, and another visit to the Red Roof Inn. So far, Dad's worries seemed misplaced. I was managing everything just fine. When I picked up Babs for our Saturday night dance, she surprised me with her outfit. Tucked-in Levi's, a tasseled shirt, cowboy boots, a belt buckle the size of a saucer, and a cowboy hat. I felt completely out of place in my regular jeans from Walmart, a simple belt buckle, a flannel shirt, and leather-soled boots without a hat. I laughed and said, "I bet you'll have to teach me how to dance too." "You'd better bring your A-game tonight, Bubba. With the way they're playing, I know you'll need it." And she was right. While I knew 3 or 4 line dances, she knew them all. I could manage a decent two-step and handle the ladies' turns, but she had a few extra moves I wasn't familiar with. I was okay with the waltz, and I could do the cowboy cha-cha as a line dance, but translating that into a couple's version was beyond me. My lack of skill and her expertise didn't go unnoticed. Soon, other guys started coming up to our table, asking if they could dance with her. I could see she wanted to be on the floor, so I always said yes, even though I wanted to say no. I even agreed to let Ronnie Holbrook ask her to dance, despite my dislike for him. My mom commented, "You need to take some dance lessons, Bobby. You'll have to up your game if you keep bringing her to country western nights." It's a rough night, when even your own mother thinks you need improvement. Despite my clumsiness, I spent enough time on the floor with Babs to make the evening enjoyable. Things were different at the Red Roof. On the way to the motel, Babs said, "I know tonight has been tough for you, but I want to thank you properly for everything. I plan to show my appreciation when we get to the room." And she did. That night, Babs made sure I felt truly valued. I was so exhausted afterward that I couldn't muster the energy to drive her back to the dorm, so we ended up falling asleep together for the first time. When morning came and sunlight poured through the window, I checked my watch and realized I had to be at work in 40 minutes. Leaving was hard when you're still savoring someone's presence, especially with responsibilities waiting. Babs looked a bit disappointed not to be woken up, but I explained that I needed to get to work because my dad relies on me to handle things while he's away. I had to get her back to the dorm. "If you're not too upset, we can continue this evening," she said quietly. She didn't reply verbally, just quickly. Out he dressed. The drive to the dorm was quiet. I chose to stay silent until she spoke, which she didn't. As she got out of the car, I asked, "Tonight?" She hesitated before answering. As she was closing the car door, she said, "Call me," and walked into the dormitory. I had a rough day at work, feeling the after effects of the previous night. Luckily, I only worked half days on Saturdays. Dad didn't comment much, but Mom had questions when I got home. "And where have you been, young man?" she asked. "At work," I replied. "That's not what I meant. What's really going on?" I had to lie, not out of fear of her reaction, but to keep the details of my night with Babs private. After I dropped Babs off at the dorm, I went to a party. There was punch, and someone must have spiked it. I felt unwell and didn't want to drive, so Chuck, who hosted the party, let me stay over. She scrutinized me for a moment, trying to gauge the truth. "Why didn't you take Babs to the party with you?" she asked. "I had to get her back to the dorm early because of a curfew or something," I explained. "So why didn't you call and let me know where you were so I wouldn't worry?" "I didn't want to wake you up at 1 a.m. If I hadn't had to work today, I'd have been home before you were even up, so I didn't see the need to call," I replied. "Robert," she said, clearly upset, "as long as you live under my roof." I cut her off. "Please don't go there. It's not the right time." She gave me a stern look before turning and heading to the kitchen. The year before, when I told my parents I was planning to get an apartment, my mom spent every waking hour for the next 2 weeks trying to convince me not to. I could afford it. My paternal grandparents had set up a trust fund for me the day I was born, and my maternal grandparents contributed as well. It wasn't a massive amount, just over $70,000, but it was enough to cover my educational expenses and more. I couldn't access it until I was 25, but it was there for me. I discovered that apartment expenses could be covered if the apartment was within a mile of a school. There were 7 complexes in that range, and I wanted to move into one of them. Even though I tried to reassure my mom, she was still aware of my plans. After taking a shower, I called Babs. When she answered, I asked if we had any plans for the evening. "Why do you ask?" she replied. "You seemed a bit distant when I dropped you off this morning." Can you blame me? I'm not used to a guy pulling away when I want to make love. It was tough for me too, but I had to go to work. "I know, but it still frustrated me. What are we doing tonight?" "How about a movie, a burger and fries, and then we pick up where we left off?" "Why don't we skip the movie and food and go straight to recreating last night?" "If that's what you want, then fine." As time went on, Babs and I grew even closer. She got along well with my parents and joined us for dinner at least once a week. When Thanksgiving came, Babs decided it wasn't worth flying to Michigan for just 4 days, and then rushing back to school. I asked my parents if she could join us for Thanksgiving dinner, and they agreed. Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners were family affairs. Uncle Jim, Aunt Eliza, Uncle Bill, Aunt Marge, and cousins, Rachel, Janice, and Megan, were all there. I introduced Babs to everyone, and we all chatted until dinner was ready. It was a pleasant gathering, but as the evening wound down, Janice pulled me aside for a private conversation. Janice and I had always been close. Growing up, we used to joke about getting married when we were older. Those fantasies faded when my mom and Aunt Eliza explained what incest was, but we remained best friends. She looked at me seriously and said, "Are you serious about this girl?" "Yes, I'm thinking about asking her to marry me. Why?" "She gives me a bad vibe. I don't think she's as she appears. Be careful, Bobby. I don't want you to get hurt." Was I paying attention to Janice's concerns? Honestly, I wasn't. She had a bad feeling about Babs, but she barely knew her and had spent less than 3 hours around her. I figured that anyone I was serious about might give her the same impression. If she couldn't be with me, it made sense she wouldn't want to like someone who could. When the holidays arrived, Babs went back to Michigan. She reassured me not to worry if she didn't call every day, as she'd be busy visiting my relatives and spending time with my parents. She called 2 or 3 times a week, always telling me she missed me and couldn't wait to return. On New Year's Eve, which fell on a Friday, Babs called me at 4:30. She told me she couldn't be with me to kiss me at midnight, but she promised to make it up to me as soon as she was back. She gave me her flight number and arrival time, asking me to pick her up at the airport and head straight to the motel. I had a surprise for her. My mom had finally relented and allowed me to rent my own place. I found an apartment just a quarter mile from campus, and my parents' Christmas gift was the furniture I needed. When I picked Babs up at the airport, her kiss was electrifying. "Take me to bed, baby. We have a lot of catching up to do." On the way back to the apartment, we talked about our vacations. We drove past 3 motels before Babs asked, "What's going on? I thought we needed a bed and fast, but you're driving past all these motels." "That's because we don't need a motel. While you were away, I moved into an apartment." Once we were in the apartment, Babs eagerly explored every room. I'd rented a 2-bedroom place, using one room for a desk, computer, printer, and modem, so we had to get creative, studying on the desk, on the kitchen table, on the couch in the living room, and even in the bathroom, leaning against the wall in the shower. Afterward, I took her out to dinner, and over dessert I asked her to move in with me. Her smile faded as soon as I popped the question. "Promise you won't hold a grudge against me?" she asked. "No. From the way you said it, you're clearly upset, so just tell me what's going on." "I'm not ready to take that big step yet." "I thought we were making progress," I said. "We are, baby, we are. But moving in together feels too much like marriage, and I'm not ready for that. I want to maintain my freedom, come and go as I please, and not feel like I'm reporting to someone. What we have is working well for me. Please, don't get me wrong. I'm not looking for someone else. I just need more time." Knowing that anything I said would likely be the wrong thing, I chose to accept the situation as it was rather than push for what I wanted. When we got back to the apartment, Babs declared it was time to make the bed and headed for the bedroom, shedding clothes along the way. She'd already removed 3 of my clothes before dinner, and she managed to take off another one before we fell asleep together. Things were smooth between us until February. I remember the date clearly. February 6th. When I picked Babs up from the dormitory, she mentioned she needed to collect a few things she'd left at the apartment. When I asked her why, she dropped the bombshell. "I dropped out of high school and am moving back to Michigan." "Why?" I asked, bewildered. "I'm pregnant." "Why are you leaving? I was planning to propose, buying a ring and all. I was going to wait until I finished university and started working full-time." "It's not yours." "What do you mean? I don't understand." "The baby is my husband's. I left my IUD at home when I went on vacation, so we used condoms, but one of them must have broken." "Your husband?" "Yes, you were just a friend with benefits. We had an arrangement where we could both have other partners as long as we were careful and didn't let it get serious. Why are you here and he's over there? He won a scholarship to Wayne State University, and I won one here. We decided it was best for our futures to accept the scholarships and endure the separation for 4 years. We'll have spring break, summer break, and Christmas break to be together. So, you had no real feelings for me? Don't be silly. I do like you. I like you a lot. If I weren't so in love with Charlie, you might have been able to steal me away from him. I need a DNA test. That's not going to happen, baby. Why not? He could be mine. Even if by some chance that's the case, I'm not going to leave Charlie and move here. Would you be willing to relocate to Michigan, where I wouldn't be involved in your life at all? Or would you be okay with flying or driving to see the kid every few weeks? No, we're both better off not knowing. I hated to admit it, but she was right. If she wasn't willing to leave her husband, it was better for me not to know the truth. As she packed up her things, I stared out the window at the freshly fallen snow. She came up behind me, wrapped her arm around my shoulders, and said, "Take me to the bedroom so we can say goodbye properly." I wish I could say I refused, but I couldn't. She was incredible in bed, and I doubted I'd ever find someone like her again. When I dropped her off at the dorm, she gave me a passionate kiss, then got out of my car and walked into the building, disappearing from my life. I spent most of spring break in a funk. I threw myself into work, which helped distract me a bit. When I was busy, I didn't have time to dwell on her, but I couldn't work nonstop. As soon as I left the office at the end of the day, she was back in my thoughts. On the first day back at school, I was sitting in the cafeteria when Pauline sat down across from me. "How are you doing, Bobby?" she asked. "So-so. How about you?" "About the same. I heard Barbara dropped out and went back home. Is that true?" "I'm afraid so." "Is it too soon to ask if you're looking for a replacement?" I knew exactly what she was hinting at, but I had my own question. "How did your dates with other guys go?" "I learned a lot. I realized I lost the best thing I had. Please, Bobby, let me come back." "I'm sorry, Pauline, but you know my stance on you dating others." "I'm over that, Bobby. I had what I needed all along. I just didn't realize it." "You need to understand one thing before we can try to get back what we had. If you bring up dating other people again, we're done for good. There won't be a third chance." "I've looked, Bobby, and it was a waste of time. Please, give me another chance." We'd had something good before things went south, and if we could restore that, I'd be open to it. But I had to be cautious with Pauline. She seemed more subdued than the confident Pauline I remembered. It felt off, like she was crawling back rather than coming back. We agreed to have dinner and go to the dance on Friday, and then headed to class. After lunch at work, my dad asked if I would join him and my mom at the VFW on Saturday. I said I'd check with Pauline to see if she wanted to come along. "Pauline, are you two back together?" he asked. "We're going to give it another shot. I'm not sure how it will turn out, but we're going to try." "Your mom will be pleased to hear that. She was quite upset when you two broke up. Just make sure she doesn't start planning weddings yet. It's not set in stone." "You have doubts?" "Yes, we'll have to see how things play out." Our date went well, and I had a good time. When I walked her home, I gave her a gentle kiss. She seemed a bit let down that I didn't invite her back to my place to continue where we left off, especially after she'd mentioned her plans to date others. Pauline and I had been intimate since we were 18, and our mothers were busy preparing for the wedding. I wasn't sure why I hadn't invited her over. As I drove home, I wondered if I was subconsciously punishing her for her past actions. But that didn't make much sense. Punishing myself to punish her? By the time I got back to my apartment, I resolved that the next time we went out, it would end at my place. If she was up for it, of course. I called her Saturday morning to see if she had plans for the evening. When she said she didn't, I invited her to the VFW with me and my parents, and she agreed. When I picked her up, she looked incredibly attractive. We made casual conversation on the way to the VFW hall. Upon arrival, her mom greeted her with a big hug and expressed how thrilled she was to see her. We spent a lot of time dancing and had a fantastic evening. As we were leaving the VFW parking lot, Pauline asked, "What's your apartment like?" "Do you want to see it?" I asked, not surprised when she said yes. The sound of the door closing behind us was barely audible before her dress hit the floor. She kicked off her high heels and commanded, "Bedroom, now." I didn't argue and led her to the bedroom. As I undressed, she urged, "Hurry up. We have a lot of catching up to do." It was a new experience for me. While Babs had spent a lot of time in the area, she had never lived there. Except for living with my parents, I had never cohabited with anyone else, so it was something I needed to get used to. It was nice to go to bed and wake up each morning with someone regularly. Pauline seemed eager to make up for lost time, and there were mornings when all I did was get out of bed. 4 months later, I was seriously considering telling my parents they could resume their wedding planning. I'm not sure why I didn't, but I was glad I didn't. During summer vacation from school, I was working full-time in the family business. One Tuesday morning, my dad called me into his office and informed me that one of our best clients was having issues. He needed me to fly to Atlanta to sort things out. I called Pauline at work, she was employed at Macy's in the mall, to let her know what was happening and that I should be home by Friday or Saturday. She said she would miss me and urged me to hurry back. The problem was resolved quickly, and by 11 o'clock Thursday morning, I was ready to fly home. I didn't call Pauline because she was at work and wouldn't have been able to rush home to meet me. I got home just in time to see her slide into the red Dodge truck, settle next to the driver, share a passionate kiss, and then sit close beside him as they drove off. I considered calling her cell phone to ask what was going on, but decided it was better to wait and see what would unfold. She wasn't home when I went to bed, and she still wasn't there when I woke up. I called my dad to let him know I needed some personal time off, and then got to work packing up all of Pauline's things into garbage bags. I went to Home Depot, bought a new deadbolt, installed it, set the trash bags outside the door, and then headed to work. At 5 minutes past 4 that afternoon, my cell phone rang. It was Pauline. I answered, "Hi, Pauline." "Hey, I'm at the apartment, but my key isn't working. Can you help me get in?" "It would have worked if you had come home last night. Where were you?" "I don't understand what you're talking about." "Of course I know, Pauline. I came home yesterday and you weren't there. You still haven't come home, so where have you been?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I finally said, "Let me guess. You were with the guy in the red Dodge truck, weren't you?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Come on, Pauline. The red Dodge truck says it all. I don't understand how you could put so much effort into getting back with me, only to throw it all away. The garbage bags by the door are filled with your things. Goodbye, Pauline." But it didn't end there. When I got home, she was waiting for me. She got out of her car and approached me. "Can we go inside and talk?" "You don't need to. I gave you a chance, took you back, and now there won't be a third time." "If you'll just let me explain—" I cut her off. "There's nothing you can say that will change my mind. I saw you get into that Dodge truck, kiss the driver passionately, and sit close beside him as he drove away. You didn't come home last night, and you still weren't there when I left for work at noon. There's no explanation that would make any difference." I turned and walked into my apartment, leaving her standing outside. I threw myself into work for the rest of summer vacation, and when school started again, I stayed busy with classes and work. I went with my parents to the VFW for a country western night and participated in almost every line dance. Occasionally, I'd see Pauline on campus, but I made a point to avoid her. 2 weeks into the new semester, I turned 21. On Saturday night, I went to the VFW and enjoyed my first legal beer. I was relaxing after a dance when a girl who looked vaguely familiar approached and asked me to dance. She was strikingly attractive, and I didn't mind holding a beautiful woman in my arms, even if it was just for a dance. As we waltzed across the floor, I couldn't quite place her, but she seemed to recognize me. "You don't remember me, do you?" "You look familiar, but I can't quite place you." "Not surprising. You were always focused on Pauline. What happened with you two? I thought you were already married." "It's a long and sad story. Julie Summers would love to hear it sometime." "Julie? Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. After 4 years together in high school, I can't believe I forgot you." Don't worry. There are plenty of people I can't remember either. I remember you because I kept hoping you'd break up with Pauline so I could get a chance with you. Really? Absolutely. But it's too late now, isn't it? Actually, it's not too late at all. No date tonight? It's hard to believe with how good you look. Are you here with someone? No, just with my mom and dad. As the song ended and the band announced a break, I spotted a vacant table and led Julie to it. We placed our drink orders with the waitress and continued chatting. I eventually asked her out on a date, and she eagerly agreed, writing her phone number on a napkin for me. We talked until the band resumed playing, and then danced through the next set. When the band took another break, we sat down again to talk. A few minutes later, my dad came over to say they were ready to leave. Since I had come with my parents, I had to let Julie know I'd call her later, and walked her back to her parents' table. The next day, I called her to set up an afternoon date. I picked her up at 1 o'clock, and we went to a matinee at Cinema 2. After the movie, I took her to dinner at Carl's Chop House, where, to my surprise, Pauline was there with a man I didn't recognize. When Julie and I were seated, Pauline shot me an unfriendly look. As we waited for our food, Julie, who was seated across from Pauline, noticed that Pauline couldn't tear her eyes away from us. "What's the long, sad story?" she asked. I recounted the details, and Julie was stunned. "She actually fought to get you back and then did this? There's something seriously wrong with her." "I'm not here to argue about it," I replied. Then things took an unexpected turn. Pauline and her companion got up to leave. As Pauline passed by our table, she said, "Watch out, Julie. Don't flirt with him, or he'll spank you like he did me." Julie laughed and responded, "It's too late, Pauline. We've been together for over a month now." Pauline shot her a disapproving look and walked away. Julie turned to me with a smile. "You overwhelmed me with your passion. I even had trouble remembering my name." "It's a shame you brushed me off. We could have enjoyed another night together." "But if you already have one, there's no risk." "True, but the issue remains." "What's that?" "It's my time of the month." "I guess we'll have to wait then," Julie said with a laugh. We shared a smile and a laugh before I drove her home. We set up our next date for Tuesday, and when I walked her to the door, she gave me a sweet kiss with a hint of tongue. I drove home with a smile on my face. Things were going well between us, and as time passed, I started thinking about proposing. A week before graduation, I planned to do it on our next date, which was set for Saturday. However, on Thursday, Julie called shortly after I got home and asked me to meet her at the Village Inn. When I arrived, Julie was already seated in a booth. I joined her and ordered a coffee. As I waited for the waitress to bring it, I noticed Julie wasn't her usual self. She looked a bit down. When the coffee arrived, I took a sip and then set the cup down. "Okay, what's going on? Lay it on me." Julie sighed before speaking. "Bob, I like you a lot, but I don't love you. I've spent the last few months hoping my feelings would change, but they haven't. I've been dreading that you might ask me to commit to something I just can't do. I don't think it's fair to keep dating you when you're looking for something I can't offer. I asked you here to let you know that I won't be seeing you anymore. I'm sorry, but this is where it ends. I hope you don't hate me. I've enjoyed our time together, but it's best if we part ways." I sat there, a bit stunned by her words. After a moment, I said, "I could never hate you, Jewel. I'm upset, of course, but I appreciate your honesty. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to find somewhere to drown my sorrows in a beer." I stood up, left a 20 on the table, and walked out. As I drove home, I pondered what was wrong with me. I could attract women, but I couldn't seem to keep them. Why was that? Graduation came, along with a full-time job that felt familiar since I'd been working there part-time since I was 15. I threw myself into work and didn't actively seek out new relationships. Though I stayed active, bowling every Wednesday night and attending VFW country western nights with my parents, I remained single. My mom's repeated questions about when I'd settle down and give her grandchildren were always met with a vague someday. But finding someone to settle down with was not on my immediate horizon. I was still reeling from Pauline, Babs, and Julie. I struggled to convince myself that there was someone out there for me, but it seemed like a distant dream. My sex life after Julie consisted of solitary activities and memories of past relationships. Over the next year, I dated a few girls and had occasional flings, but none of them inspired me to propose. Sunday dinners with my parents continued, with my mom persistently asking about grandchildren. I never mentioned how elusive that goal seemed. One late Friday evening, I was waiting in my office for a call from Phil Biggs, a purchasing agent for a large manufacturing company. Phil was supposed to confirm if his company would place a large order of Mark IIIs from us. It was 5:30, and as I was about to leave, the phone rang. I answered, "Good afternoon, Falcon Industries. This is Bob." "Hey, Bob, it's Phil Biggs. We're ready to proceed. I'll fax the order as soon as we hang up." "Thanks, Phil. Have a great weekend." "Same to you, Bob. Talk to you later." As I ended the call, I thought the day couldn't end on a better note. But I was wrong. Just as I was leaving, the phone rang again. "Good afternoon, Falcon Industries. This is Bob." "Hey, babe, miss me?" For a moment, I couldn't believe it. "Is that really you?" I asked. "Yes, it's me. Are you surprised to hear from me again? How are things?" "Well, I didn't expect to hear from you. How are things with you?" "I've had my share of ups and downs, just like everyone else. Right now I'm on an upswing." "I'm calling to find out when you finish work." "Why do you need to know that?" "I need to let your mom know what time you're coming over for dinner." "Are you at my parents' house?" "Yes, I thought it was time for her to meet her grandchildren. She's playing with them in the living room right now." "Grandchildren? What are you talking about?" "The sooner you get here, the sooner you'll find out." I might have broken a few traffic laws on my way to my parents' house, but I didn't dwell on it. As I arrived, I saw Babs waiting for me at the front door. She stood in the doorway and said, "The price of admission is a kiss." I paused for a moment, then leaned in to kiss her forehead. "I meant a kiss, not a peck," she said, grabbing my head and pulling me in for a passionate kiss that left me breathless. She finally pulled away, and I asked, "What's going on here, Babs? Come inside and you'll see." I followed her inside, and she led me to my father's den. She sat on the leather couch and patted the seat beside her. "Sit down." I did, and she began, "I told you I was pregnant when I left, and I said my husband was the father, not you." Well, it turned out he wasn't. He was actually infertile and had known it long before we got married. He was going to tell me, but only after I mentioned the kids. Instead, he went to a bar, got drunk, and then crashed into a telephone pole. By the time I came to my senses, it was time for me to give birth. Fortunately, my parents were there to help me through it. I don't know what would have happened without them. Kids? You have twin girls, Bobby. I fought hard to bring them into this world. My mom was reluctant to let us go, fearing she'd never see them again. I had to promise I'd bring them to visit her. I convinced my dad to persuade her that you need to at least meet them and know that you're their father. I didn't warn you I was coming because I was afraid you'd reject me. Are you ready to meet your children?" "No," I said, standing up. I saw her face fall, then added, "But there's something we need to do first." "What?" I stood up, turned around, and knelt before her. "Barbara Marie Beeler, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she pulled me into an embrace and exclaimed, "Hell yes, I will." She kissed me passionately, a kiss that could melt steel. We stood together, and she guided me into the living room to meet our daughters.